Welcome back to the Law of Relevancy. I'm your host, Cord Zoen. I'm the CEO of Bake More Pies, and today I'm joined by Aaron Burnett. He is the CEO and founder of Wheelhouse Digital Marketing Group, a very similar business to what we do here at Bake More Pies. And he's also the host of the Digital Clinic, a podcast about digital marketing. Aaron, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. I tell you what, one of the things that I was excited about when I was preparing for our talk today is how deep you guys go into healthcare marketing. Because we've learned over the years that there are some very particular things, and there's rules and there's policies, there's laws, and a lot of times those policies and those laws are different things. And when you're navigating digital marketing for healthcare groups, especially when you're talking about medical devices or clinics or hospitals or things like that, and you guys seem to have navigated it very, very successfully and made it a big part of your business. Tell us what you're seeing with your clients and your experiences with digital marketing for healthcare.
Yeah. So first, I think you described the landscape pretty accurately. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of regulation. The regulations become more expansive and more complex, it seems, every day, certainly every week. If you start at the state level, I think there are 19 or 20 states that have their own versions of digital privacy regulations. We have federal bodies, we have international bodies. Sometimes they're in alignment with one another, sometimes they conflict. But you're right, lots of strictures, lots of complexity. So I'll tell you first how we got into healthcare marketing and medtech marketing, which is kind of the reason why we've navigated this really well. We started working with our first healthcare client in 2012. So we're, pardon me, we're a dozen or so to working with healthcare clients. And that was a very large healthcare system. And at the time, we didn't have to deal with all of the same regulations we deal with today. We started on the technical side. We developed a global analytics strategy for them and implemented it across about 200 domains. And as we worked on the analytics side and the technical side, we became more very well acquainted with the regulatory strictures that had to do with healthcare marketing. We grew through referral like lots of agencies do. We grew very quickly. And over time, healthcare and medtech became about 75% of our business. And each time we expanded into a new healthcare system, a new medtech client, and we took what we'd learned with previous clients and what enabled us to drive performance with those clients to our new clients. One of the things that we've done that set us apart is that we built our own technology to deal with the peculiarities and the limitations of healthcare and medtech marketing. And really, as you alluded to, those strictures, those restrictions are around data privacy. If you're marketing to a healthcare audience, there are certain things you can't track. There's information that's available to other digital marketers in other industries that you can't use. You can't track some behaviors, including on some platforms, the ultimate conversion behavior that you want to achieve. That's the case with Meta as of January 2025. They have said there are some types of data that they won't allow you to track if you're in certain, what they've called sensitive industries or categories, and healthcare and medtech are a couple of those. In other instances, you can't target audiences in the same way that you can in other industries. So we can't define an audience demographically and psychographically in a platform and then go after them. We can't remarket in the same way that you can. And this one sort of is more obvious, even just to the consumer. If you're looking for assistance with a healthcare issue, you really don't want to see that same ad popping up in lots of other contexts over the next week or two or three. You want that to be something that is private and personal for you, that other users of your computer don't find out about because some sloppy digital marketer was retargeting.
Right. You don't want to be in a meeting in a boardroom and have like an ad for like hemorrhoid cream pop up when you're showing somebody.
That's exactly right.
Like in the browser, right?
Yeah. And so, all of this means that you can't dabble in healthcare marketing, can't dabble in medtech marketing. You have to have really deep knowledge, and you have to have both the technology that supports unique forms of data collection and data analysis, and deep expertise that enables you and your strategists and your marketers to know how to use that information. So by specific example, if you're marketing in pretty much any other industry, you can use platform data. You can use Google Analytics to track behavior. You can use Google Ads and the Meta platform. You can do all of your targeting there and maintain all of your data in the cloud on these third-party platforms. You can't do any of that if you're in healthcare and med tech. If you actually want to uh, collect data with any degree of granularity and fidelity, you have to collect it in a HIPAA-compliant data repository. In our case, we built our own HIPAA-compliant data warehouse so that it's structured in a way that complies with all these privacy regulations, and we sign what's called a business associates agreement
Right.
that obligates us to the same privacy, uh, the same privacy obligations that a healthcare system has, a medtech system has. One of the things to know about healthcare marketing is that uh, it's not the collection of data as a healthcare entity or as an agency that is part of that umbrella of privacy and trust. You can collect everything that you need. You just can't share. It's the act of sharing with a third party that's problematic.
Yeah,
So
access control is a big part of those BAA agreements.
that's absolutely right. And so one of the things that we needed to do is to develop our own approach to HIPAA compliant data collection and HIPAA compliant data strategy. So we developed a technical solution that replaces all third party tracking with a single private client ID. It's the only way data can be collected on a client site. The data that's collected is governed by a data library that we define with the client. We have data cleansing and sanitizing elements in this platform, and we control what's shared with a third party down to a single data attribute so that we ensure absolute compliance with privacy regulations, while at the same time retaining and maintaining full fidelity data to support our targeting and optimization needs.
Yeah, and potentially even allowing you to model lookalike audiences going forward. It's like how do I make a lookalike audience on this group of this cohort of people and do it in a way that is you're allowed to do it.
Yeah,
And then
that's
how do you even
exactly right.
use it, right?
Right.
Like how do you even deploy it? Like you need to have special platforms even to deploy it because you can't deploy it within Google or
No,
Facebook.
no, you can't. And in the same way, you alluded to first party data, which is, it's nice conceptually, but as you suggested, unless you have the right infrastructure, you actually can't use it. You'd be in
Mhm.
violation. And so again, we need this data warehouse so that we can directly integrate with client CRM platforms, upload their own first party data, and have that as a part of the data repository that we can analyze. The way that we have to behave with regard to platforms is that we can complete very complex, very rigorous analysis and glean insights and develop target audiences in the context of our own data warehouse. And we can define those things, but a lot of it has to be implemented in the platform using kind of what's called an air gap methodology. So we
Yeah.
can't send data to them. We need a smart strategist who develops the insights through our own BI practice and then activates the insights in the platform without sharing any data.
That's right. Can you think of, so I'm going to put you on the spot here because, we've talked a lot about what you can't do, right? And I'm an optimist. So risk management is something that I don't excel at, in a lot of ways. Like
Sure.
I like to break things. I like to push ahead, forge ahead. Um, but I think what would be really helpful for the people listening to us right now is tell us a couple of examples of campaigns that you ran. So like here we had this challenge for this particular device or whatever. And so like how did we develop the targeting? And then how did we deliver or execute on that campaign? And then how did we measure the results?
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you a couple of examples. So, first, I'll tell you, and I think your question is a really good question. There's a lot of focus on limitations in healthcare marketing. Our experience actually is the limitations significantly improve the quality of the outcome. Because when you use platform data as the conversion signal, the easiest signal to measure is also the laziest and potentially least valuable signal. So, for example, for medtech, we have a very large medical device client. And for a long time, we targeted and measured lead generation. And that's great. You can measure that in the platform. But as privacy regulations increased, We couldn't measure that conversion in the same way. We needed to integrate with their CRM and start pulling in first-party data. And the rigor required to do that also drove us to focus on the ultimate conversion, which wasn't a lead. It was actually becoming a customer, a paying customer for this particular device. Because we had to integrate with their CRM and start pulling in first-party data, we also took that as the opportunity to begin to measure the ultimate downstream signal, which is paying customer. And to optimize to that, it was much harder. It took us quite a bit of time to get all of the data together, get the permissions from the client organization, because they're a very complex global organization, to begin to do that. So the outcome of focusing on that ultimate conversion that had true business value rather than the more vanity metric of lead generation is that for that client, over a period of about 24 months, we went from spending, say, $1 million, $1.5 million a month with a target CPM that I won't share just because I can't, with a target CPM that was perfectly acceptable to them, to scaling up spend by about 5x. So instead of $1 million a month, we're spending 5, sometimes 7, sometimes 8. And we were able to increase lead generation while reducing cost of acquisition because we changed the optimization metric that we were using by accessing and relying on first-party data.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute, because I think what you hit on is one of the biggest challenges when you're talking about enterprise clients in a lot of ways, especially like medical clients. I mean, up and down the spectrum, they're probably all, you get varying types of people who are willing to take certain risks. But as a marketing and advertising agency, to be able to get access to their electronic, health record, not like the charts or anything, but you're able to see the account generation and whether or not they're coming back for visits or things like that, right? That's a really big deal. And a lot of times, like I can tell you, like one of the ones that we've looked at integrating in the past for some of our clients, one called like Athena Health, and they want to charge you like 20 grand upfront API fee or something.
Right.
Just to be able to talk to the data and then be able to like measure it back with like, okay, I generated this lead. Did they actually come in for a visit? Things like that. It's really, really important. But number one, you have to have the technical platform to even do it.
Right.
You have to have the client that's even willing to give you access to it at all. And the bigger the organization, it sounds like your organization is multinational, very large global organization. There are more people are in that organization warning others to say, don't do it. It's almost, because no one gets fired for saying, don't do that.
Sure.
It's like the people that stick their neck out are the ones that have the most risk.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a couple of ways that we've been able to be successful in doing that. The first is that our client relationships are very long. Our average client tenure is about 6.5 years. There are no circumstances that I can think of when we've been able to engage with a new client and say 3 months in, we want direct API access to your CRM. And we want to be able to pull in first-party data. We want access to these downstream signals that are very much in the realm of privacy. We earn that over time, and we do it by being very clear-eyed internally, but also clear with the client in saying, this is the roadmap. We're going to do these things in the near term that are going to drive performance. And we understand the political landscape of an organization like yours. And we know that we need to build capital for you, and you need to then evangelize what we're doing. And we will then build capital throughout the organization. And we'll tell a story, which is, with this data, we were able to do that. If you give us access to this data, we'll be able to do this. And after that, as we prove ourselves out, this is where we'd ultimately like to go. But we also understand that we need to earn the next step all along the way. And
that's really good advice.
Yeah. And for us, direct access to the very private information at an API level with this client took 2.5 years.
Yeah, well, but your approach is the right one. And as I've gotten older and I think about relationships or conversations, or maybe I'm like, there's somebody that I know I want to do business with, I know I want to get something at some point down the road. as I've gotten to be more advanced in my life, I think about those relationships more like a song. It's like everything doesn't have to happen in the first verse.
Right.
We just got to lay the groundwork so that I can get to that next stepping stone, that next verse, that next part of the song. And I will get there, right? Because they had to understand how you guys did business. They had to understand that you're trustworthy, that you're professional, that you're not sloppy,
Right.
things like that. And then that way they can open it up, and also you can demonstrate, your expertise. And the way that you described it of like, hey, we're going to come in here, we're going to block and tackle, we're going to do all the things that we should do based off of this initial engagement. We're going to be able to deliver, best in class results, right? For what we have access to. If you guys want to go to another level, it's totally your choice.
Sure.
You want to go, it's totally your choice. All we need is this next thing. And, and then you do it. And it's like, why not?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The thing that we've been able to show and that we always try to show is that this is the most efficient channel, that digital marketing will deliver the best results for you among your marketing mix, and that will be generous with the insights that we glean, and we will support your other channels. We're not very competitive as an agency. We never go in trying to win business from another incumbent agency. We're not trying to take over. If there's another agency that's handling analytics or something like that, then we're going to do our best to support them. Stewardship is a core value for us, and our job is to make sure that the client achieves their outcome. And by demonstrating that we can so efficiently deliver value for them and that we're going to be good for their business overall, we're not being self-serving, we earn trust over time. But we just know that it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things you mentioned in your story about how you actually do some of the targeting and gain the insights, you talked about your BI practice. And it kind of brings up this area of our industry that is rapidly evolving. I think even last week, there were two other like major announcements that are like complete game changers. And that's with obviously I'm talking about generative AI. I'm talking about deep research is a new functionality that you can get with ChatGPT Pro. You're paying $200 a month for an AI platform that, a lot of the AI you can access it for free or for $20 a month. So you're paying 10 times the price, but you're getting otherworldly like results in terms of like the results that come out of it. And even some of the automations through Operator and it being able to open a browser session and literally do things that like a marketing associate might be able to do.
Yeah.
How are you guys seeing AI to, like I mentioned, BI to analyze some of the data? Like, how are you using it to uncover insights? And then how are you using it elsewhere within your business?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are good questions, important and complicated answers. So we're actively evaluating AI-enabled BI platforms, specifically to be able to more quickly develop and deliver insights. And there are a couple of ways that we think about that. One is that there are emerging platforms that are very well funded that can help with the ETL process, extract, transform, and load, how to get data in from all of the platforms. There's a non-trivial amount of work that is required just to maintain the ETL pipeline and to structure the data, particularly in our data warehouse, because what we're doing in our data warehouse isn't just to create discrete tables by channel or platform. We're harmonizing and normalizing the data so that you have common nomenclature. And when you want to evaluate conversions and you want to look at a user journey that is the complete user journey, that you can do it as customers traverse a top funnel channel like YouTube or social or something like that. And you can see them all the way through because we've normalized that data. So we think of its efficiency and value in terms of reducing operational workload and cost on the ETL side. We also are excited by what we see in the promises of some of these platforms. In all candor, and we've spent a lot of time looking at this, the platforms can't yet do what our BI analysts can.
I'm wondering if you probably looked at some of the same platforms we did. We've been in the middle of an integration project right now. We're about to wrap it up, but we've been doing it since the late summer. and we're 6-7 months into this,
Right.
and it's not cheap.
No,
It's not cheap.
it's not cheap. Well, so I can tell you, and I'll tell you who the platform is when we're done with the recording, but we
Okay.
just went through an extensive evaluation. We didn't pull the trigger
Yeah.
with a platform provider that's an AI enabled BI platform. And their promises through several calls were that they could do everything that we needed. And we said, step one, the gate is you have to replicate what we've already built in Power BI
Yeah.
for our clients. And when we finally got to, okay, you need to show us that you can replicate it in this proof of concept, they couldn't. It wasn't smoke and mirrors. It
There's a
was just,
gap
that's
when
too
it
early. The
there's a
promises
gap
didn't
when
measure
it
up to the reality.
yeah, for sure. Like I understand exactly. I have a feeling we're talking about the same company. We pulled the trigger. The There is a gap. So like for anybody listening, there is you talked about ETL. So like being able to pull the data from somewhere. So you've got your data is all over the place. It's in your marketing campaigns. It's in your CRM. It's in your customers. All these different places that the data can be. And so in order to use that data, you don't want people exporting it. You want the computers to be able to pull the data out. And then when it gets where it's going, one platform might call it clicks, the other one might call it engagements, the other one might call it, some CONV period, like just the field names and everything else. And that's where the transform and the harmonize of all of these different things, getting the data to mean the same thing.
Yep.
And then being able to actually understand what's in those tables, the platform, wherever you put it, whether it's Snowflake or BigQuery or any of these other like data lake providers, they have to be able to build those views in memory to where they can actually reliably return results, and you have to be able to query it. And then finally, them trying to replicate your BI platforms, they have to be able to, your Power BI, they have to be able to visualize the data. And that's a skill in itself. And what I've found is in going through this process internally is that it seems like the first 80% is what these platforms are really good at. The actual visualization piece is something we have to do internally.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. I would also say that, we're doing things that to us are essential given how the platforms behave and how they optimize now, right? Almost all of the optimization is algorithmic, particularly if you're looking at any visual advertising. So now creative versioning, which used to just mean A/B testing in serial, needs to mean, no, I've got 10 or 12 or 14 versions and variations of a core concept that I know that it's working. And I need to have those in market and then let the algo decide what's going to work to attract the audience I need and drive the conversions that I need. And then I need to have fresh creative because creative fatigue occurs so quickly. We see creative fatigue occurring within 7 to 14 days of any new creative concept, particularly for clients where we're running significant meetings. So if you've got a number of different campaigns and a number of different creative types, and you need 10 to 15 variations for each of those campaigns, and you need to do that every week or two, that's a lot of complexity in the creative generation, but also in analysis on the back end. So we don't want to just pull data in from the platforms. We also want to tag creatives based on awareness level and position in the user journey and do all sorts of things that enable us to glean insights. And we're finding, well, platforms can't quite do that yet. And you're absolutely right that they fall down on visualization. But the other thing that we have discovered, and we've looked quite a bit and we've looked deeply, is that consistency of result is still problematic. And that's sacrosanct for us. You have to be able to rely on the result. And we need all of those fundamental things to work really well so that we can get to the real value, which is, okay, help me find insights in this data that would have taken an analyst much longer or might not have been seen by an analyst. So it's not quite there yet. I think that we will get there, but I'm not sure we're going to get there with any of the platforms we've looked at. What we are looking at very heavily now, and in fact, what we're implementing very quickly, is the new media mix modeling platform and code repository that Google announced, which is open source and platform agnostic. We've done a pretty deep dive on the code base and the documentation and think it looks really good. We've also worked with MMM platforms in the past and have found that to be valuable, but pretty tedious and frustrating. And we're excited about the ability to build MMM on top of our own data warehouse. You asked about how we're using AI sort of in general. We're looking for solutions and implementing solutions in 3 initial areas on the service delivery side. And they are, 1, BI, getting to insights more quickly, natural language query for end users into a data warehouse, and dynamic visualization so that a strategist doesn't have to know Power BI to be able
Yeah.
to interact with the data. The second is creative versioning, the ability to maintain that pipeline of derivative creative that is consistent with client brand
Well,
guidelines.
let's talk about that for a second. So there's you do the A/B testing or A B C D E F G testing, like you're talking about, right? Let's talk about how important it is to plan the progression of those creatives. So obviously, you're going into it, you're having the creative meetings. I mean, and this is what people pay agencies for, right? This is where our bread is buttered. This is what we're supposed to be good at. How important, like, how do you guys do that process, and how important is it when you're working
Yeah.
with your clients?
Yeah. So first, let me describe what we do and what we don't do. We're not a creative agency. We're not the folks you should come to develop a new advertising concept, develop a new campaign. We focus on performance creative. So we have a campaign, we're going to test it and figure out what expressions of that campaign work best. And then we're going to use data and insights to iteratively continue to test and refine and get better and better at serving the creative that attracts the audience we want and drives the conversion we want. And
So are
so
you
for,
sending those signals back to the creative agency?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have, with most clients, we have weekly syncs, and we'll provide them with both data in the weekly syncs, but then on a monthly basis, we'll come back with a briefing. All right, here's what we're seeing. Here are the things that we think are perennial insights out of everything that we see. And this is what you might want to consider as you're developing new creative concepts and new campaigns so that it's an even more efficient process next time. We're that much closer to the bullseye with a fresh round of campaign creative. It's very much a symbiosis.
Yeah. Can you think of like the best campaign you guys ever ran, and like why do you think it was so successful?
I think the best campaign, and it's been a series, it's a theme. The best campaigns that we run are for a particular medical device manufacturer, and the reason that campaign and this series of campaigns works so well is that uh, the device unlocks a different lifestyle for the end user, and the
Yeah.
campaign enables a potential user to quickly envision themselves with a freedom um, yeah, with a freedom that they didn't have. And it shows very clearly that something that would have been a persistent daily anxiety can become an afterthought if you use this device. And that campaign thematically is super powerful and very effective. And it has an added byproduct in that, all right, there's the campaign creative, but there also is the echo, the resonance that occurs with a pretty large body of end users who also see themselves in the campaign and are more than willing to post organically on social and say, yeah, this, oh, such a game changer.
So it
Well,
it has like a major B2C component to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Our best one, the best one we ever did, like one of those that like you run the campaign and it just shocks you with the results, but like going in that that anything could happen. We were working with a whole network of clinics that were uh, um, like they were hemorrhoid clinics. Like that's all they did is treat hemorrhoids. And we created an ad where we found this picture of toilet paper, but it had like a cheese grater. It was made out of
Oh,
cheese grater.
yeah.
And so we were trying to use humor to to make people like going, oh my god, that's terrible. That would be the worst thing ever. And the creative, like this was about 11 years ago, and it went viral, like just on its own. Like I think we paid for
Right.
like I don't know, just a few $1,000s of advertising, but the advertising value was like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And the lead gen was off the charts because it first the using humor and shocking people with that image was able to relate. They were able to relate to the creative and the targeting. Obviously, this was the early days of Facebook when you could get any data set you wanted,
Right.
and um and it just did so great. I mean, I think we could target where like that was at the time when they were importing some of the Cambridge Analytica data, some of the MasterCard data. Like we could target people who bought Preparation H. I
Right.
mean, and those days are long gone. But man alive, like those are the types of things that have worked, for us in the past. But you have to be a lot more strategic and creative about how you approach the marketing now.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. What the other thing that's true is that, like you, I remember the days when you could target with a great deal of precision, right? It felt like you could
Yeah,
find the 10 people you were after. And then you could kind of follow them around as well if you were shrewd about your remarketing as
sure.
well. And anymore, because we can't target audiences in that way, and because the platforms has shifted to algorithmic targeting, the creative actually kind of serves to help find the audience as well.
Right. Yeah, it's your first filter.
Yeah.
Is this you? Like
Right.
basically, like, are you
Right.
experiencing this?
Yeah.
Um, it is a big challenge. Where do you guys see the future of healthcare marketing going?
Our thesis is that what's happening in healthcare and medtech with regard to privacy regulations
Mhm.
is coming for every vertical. Uh, that's the way the internet is going. There will be increased privacy regulations in all 50 states. There will be increased strictures, I think, federally. That certainly is the momentum. And so I think we're likely to end up in a kind of context that is similar to the European context. Hopefully, not quite that strict, but I think with similar sorts of strictures, we won't have the same precision data available via third parties, and we won't be allowed to use it. And so, our perspective is that whether you are or are not in healthcare or medtech, you should have a first party data strategy. You should be thinking about ensuring that you have earned the right to market to your customer. So,
Right.
we see this as, in similar fashion, thematically to your question about what's possible because of privacy regulations. What has that enabled? Our belief is that the increased privacy regulations force a return to much better marketing.
Yeah,
So,
I love barriers to entry or challenges because it makes people wanna work with me.
yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm selfish, it's like, "Oh, that's hard? Great." You know?
Well, it
It's
also
like
means that clients now have to actually be
yeah.
willing to invest in quality. It
Yes.
used to be, and I know you'll remember
Thank
this as well.
goodness.
So if you took over digital advertising from another agency, you could step in and you could just make a whole bunch of adjustments and optimizations. And you could drive performance. If your analysts, your strategists were smart and you really knew how to do things in a more rigorous way than they did.
Mhm.
And the client could say, listen, I don't need to do anything fancy. We don't need to rework our messaging. We don't need to change the landing page or any of these sorts of things. I just need our PPC to perform better. And those days are gone. It
Yeah.
all is a holistic set. It is symbiotic to the extreme. And so you need better creative, you need better messaging. The messaging actually has to resonate with your customer. Your customer needs to you need to know your customer better. You need a true deep first party data strategy. You need the infrastructure to support some degree of sophisticated analysis internally so that you're not relying on third parties. And all of that is much more interesting, requires more rigor, and is more fun and more
Well,
productive.
yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, so, pixels and third party and first party, like, those are terms that are thrown around all the time. Um, let's talk about some concrete things you can do to build your own first party data set.
Sure.
So, like, if you're talking to somebody, they're a business owner or they're the chief marketing officer for, a hospital system or a medical, Smith and Nephew for like whatever, like, what are some strategies that they can take to start leveraging and building their own first party data set?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is thinking about permission marketing, thinking about offering information that requires some degree of registration and asks for permission to continue to contact folks. Uh, and that might be information, it might be a utility or a tool. It might mean sponsoring events and inviting folks to those events. It might mean partnering with other organizations and doing some co-marketing and asking for permission through in the context of that co-marketing to continue to reach out to folks. It needs to your first party data strategy needs to be woven into the communications and operations of your company, and it needs to be something that your analytics and data teams are cognizant of, that they understand the requirements at an infrastructure level for storing and using first party data, and they
And
are laying the bricks in the foundation so that that data has value on an ongoing basis. And then the final thing I'd say is, to the extent you are like all the health systems I know and you're working with partners, you're working with agencies, you need to start vetting those agencies and making sure that they are agencies with which you can establish relationships of trust so that they also can access and use the first party data that should be valuable to them in doing their jobs.
yeah, and when we're talking about first party data, like in especially in digital world, where typically what you start off with is an email address.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think where there is there's like a disconnect, but there's empirical evidence if you haven't gotten the opt-in. So like let's say you're medical device manufacturer and your device helps people with some kind of a sports injury, right? And so you have a newsletter, you have you're using your email list. Well, if you change from, call it like Constant Contact, to HubSpot or whatever marketing platform you have, they trust you. Like you can check the box that says that all these people have opted in. But if you do your campaign and you try to send it to 100,000 people and you get a 50% bounce rate because that list doesn't have regular hygiene or whatever, they're not going to trust you, even if it's true that you got permission.
Yeah.
Because that's where it shows up. So it's really important to use your first party data in a way that's very relevant to the user, or else it can expire.
Yeah. If you were to get a 50% bounce rate or a 50% unsubscribe on
Oh,
a first mailing, you'd
you'll
be
never
shut
send
down.
another email again.
No.
They'll ban you. You'll get
Yeah.
blacklisted.
Yeah. First time.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, but it is super effective if you can get people that are like informed on a regular basis through your first party communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes back to, okay, you have to be a better marketer. You have to actually deliver value so
Mhm.
that people want to maintain communication with you and they want to give you permission because the information you sent is valuable.
Yeah, I mean, and what are the types of things that you guys have found as valuable information?
Well, some of those things that I listed, in some instances, it's building tools or utilities, maybe a certain form of calculator or an assessment or something like that,
Yeah.
where registration is required to get the results afterward, or perhaps it's not required to get the results, but the results are so valuable that the user actually wants follow-up information. It's tying in with, particularly with some of our larger clients who have lots of events. It's tying in with their events team to make sure that we're collecting the right information there and that we're also asking for the right permissions when we collect that email address or other contact information. It's offering lots of content in the clear
Yeah.
that doesn't require registration, but very high quality, in depth content that you also can get or that comes with some form of follow up that does require registration. Those sorts of things have worked very well for us.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that stuff. The higher quality, the more in depth the content can be, especially when it comes to like maybe YouTube content or long form content related to how this medical thing is going to solve your problem or make your pain go away, is a really big deal. Because a lot of times in my experience, I was talking to a friend of mine. it was an innovator, and he's a surgeon, but he was really an entrepreneur. Like he was one of the world's best surgeon in parathyroid. His name's Jim Norman. You can look him up, and he's a local Tampa guy where I live. And back in the 90s, it became a hobby of his. He had developed this new way of using a radiology to detect the location of where these little grains of rice that are these parathyroid glands. Everybody has 4 of them, but they're very difficult to locate, and normally the surgery takes like 4 or 5 hours. And so through some of his research in his residency, they discovered that you can light them up using certain types of dye,
Right.
that were ingested. And so he was able to quickly locate them. And then he was able to go in very minimally invasively and do whatever surgery needed to be done. And so he'd go present, and then he would get tons of questions, and they would be like, Dr. Norman, where do you get this material, this radioactive material from? Where do you do? And so he was like, he didn't have time for all these conversations. So he starts building a website, and he got early on, he got some of the best, URLs you could possibly get for those procedures, parathyroid, thyroid, adrenal glands, things like that. And he started creating content. And so he was the OG of SEO marketing. And, and it's like a lot of the strategies we're talking about today are like paid media strategies. Like, how do I spend $1 and get back 3 or whatever?
Yeah.
But there is this other type of long game that you can do with really high quality content. And you can use it as part of your paid strategies too. But man, he ended up going to Silicon Valley. He started Healthline.com, which was one of the world's largest publishers of medical content online. And really, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because with high quality content in this space, a patient will come in a lot of times more informed about their condition than a specialist could. About their particular version, their particular symptoms and things like that. It's not until you get way down the line to like in that specialty do you get like, but a general practitioner is not going to know as much as the patient knows about their particular thing a lot of times.
Yeah, that can be true. What also is true, you were talking about AI and how it's changing our industry. One of the other benefits of really deep content, really rigorously researched, rigorously developed, is that content is much more likely to appear in an AI overview.
Absolutely.
And be cited in the AI overview with a link. If you're pumping out content that is consensus content, it's your perspective, your take on the same thing everybody else has a take on, or what you've done is to aggregate a whole bunch of information that comes from the top 10 blue links or that sort of thing, you don't have a shot. You're not going to stand out at all. Yeah,
exactly.
Those days are done.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you about where all this is headed, and it's amazing to hear your insight and y'all's specialty in the and how you've approached healthcare marketing. I'm sure it's music to the ears of a lot of chief marketing officers in your space. Hearing how you manage their risk and execute on those campaigns. Where can people follow more of your thought leadership?
They can find our website at wheelhousedmg.com. We also have a podcast, as you mentioned, called The Digital Clinic. They'll find that on YouTube and all of the various podcast platforms. They can find me and reach out to me at aaron@wheelhousedmg.com.
That's great, Aaron. Well, thanks again for joining us. And you can find us anywhere where podcasts are found, and the Law of Relevancy website, as well as the Bake More Pie social media channels. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.